Hoskinson, broadcasting live from warm, sunny Colorado. Always warm, always sunny, sometimes Colorado. Today is Christmas Eve, and before I go off to enjoy the Christmas festivities, I did want to make a video because I've recommended this product in the past, and the product has recently been hacked. And I wanted to kind of talk through some of the consequences of that hack and what you can do if you happen to be a user and what basically happened. So as many of you know, I've been using Lastpass for years, way back in the day when I was still listening to Steve Gibson and This Week in Security on the Twit network. And LastPass was just that convenient, easy to use password manager. It had a nice browser extension. It had a nice cell phone app. And I'd used it in many different security workflows because it supported most of the things that I cared about. And recently, a blog post was released by the company that said that there's been a hack. And I wanted to talk a little bit about what exactly happened. So let me go ahead and share my screen. Okay. So if you go to their website, well, it's in their blog somewhere, how it works, support. In any event, Ars Technica carried a good article on it. But basically, long and the short is how LastPass works is that you have a master password, and then it uses a something called PBKDF2, stands for Password-Based Key Derivation Function. And it's a standard that RSA came up with. And then it splits it into two buckets. One becomes an encryption key, and the other is used basically as an identifier for a vault. So LastPass has vaults, and within the vaults are usernames, passwords, and whatever notes you wanted to include there. That vault is encrypted with a standard called AES 256. So what happened was that because they're really bad at their jobs, apparently, despite the fact that they have 33 million users, they allowed their systems to get compromised, and an attacker was able to gain access to all of the encrypted vaults on LastPass. So what an attacker has to do now, the only thing they have to do is be able to guess the master password. And if they can, for each of these vaults, they're going to be able to decrypt any of those 33 million vaults that are around. Now, there is some good security hygiene in certain parts of this design. For example, using PBKDF2, it makes it really hard to brute force attack passwords that are larger, because every time you try to enter a random derivation, you're not just checking a hash against a list. You have to go through an expensive function, and that function takes some time, and that increases with the size of the password. So larger passwords, it should take quite a bit of time to be able to brute force them given these mechanisms, assuming that they actually implemented what they claim here on the website. And I don't have a lot of trust left in this company. They said things in the past like the vaults are totally encrypted and nothing is leaked. And then we come to find out that there's metadata connected to the vault that is not encrypted with the encryption key, meaning that it is probably the case that the attacker knows the identities of each of the vaults. And it has, because of that, is able to differentiate one vault from another vault. What this effectively means is that they can create a priority queue for high-value targets to go after their vaults and see if they can crack them. Now, we will assume that they've properly implemented PBKDF2. We'll assume that they properly implemented cryptography and they're using proper AES and that things are actually working there, but it's too hard to know, and the code is not open source. And at this point, they probably should make it open source so they could at least get some modicum of trust back. This is a disastrous attack because it cannot be resolved by you simply changing your master password. Every single piece of information that is stored in your encrypted vault, you have to assume at some point will become public, meaning that every password that's in the vault should be rotated. In addition to that, if there's any information, banking information, PGP keys, crypto keywords, these types of things that happen to be stored in the private notes section of LastPass, you have to assume that at some point they're going to be compromised. The problem is that even deleting your account, discontinuing using LastPass doesn't change the fact that that information has been cloned, and the encrypted copy of that information is now in the hands of an attacker of unknown capabilities. And again, we're assuming that this schematic of how LastPass works is accurate. We actually don't know how they serialize the vault. We don't know how the encryption works for their implementation of AES 256. We actually don't know if they've properly implemented PBK DF2. We don't know a lot of these things. We assume that there's some degree of competence, but the fact that they were able to lose all 33 million vaults tells me at the very least that they were not following proper storage procedures and access control procedures to protect customer information. Also, given that they've lied, where they previously said that vaults were indistinguishable from each other, but apparently now vaults are distinguishable. There's metadata and user data. A priority queue can form. And so publicly known people, be it celebrities or rich people or people who have a lot of crypto, they're probably going to be at the top of the stack for a brute force attack. Now, if you have a large master password, lots of characters with it, and everything's correctly implemented with PBK DF2, realistically speaking, the chance of decryption is exceedingly low, unless there exists some sort of new attack that the adversary has above and beyond a normal adversary. So the risk is still low, assuming the master password is fairly strong. But to be honest, I'm pretty sick and disgusted by this company. Trusted them for a long time, recommended their products, and something like this to happen when they first said, hey, there's been a hack, but don't worry, no customer data has been lost, to there's been a hack, some customer data has been lost, but don't worry, the encrypted vaults are okay, to, well, we lost all the encrypted vaults, not just a few, but every single one of them. It's extraordinary to me. Their email that they sent out too, explaining this attack, was pretty extraordinary to me as well. It was the most asinine, pathetic apology I've ever seen. Now, if you're looking for alternatives, Bitwarden is a great alternative. And let me enter that in for you guys. So they are open source. It's a much better company. The only reason I hadn't migrated to them is that I just had a lot of stuff that was still sitting in LastPass, and I said, hey, I'll get around to it. Well, better late than never. But much better InfoSec people. They're following better standards, good pricing. They also have a free product line. Highly recommend Bitwarden. It comes recommended by a lot of people. This problem with information security is that it's always a moving target. 10 years ago, LastPass was the shit, and a lot of people really looked up to them and thought that they were awesome. And now I guess they're not. So anyway, it is what it is. And if you are a LastPass user, I'd recommend you immediately migrate to a different service, be it Bitwarden or somebody else, and begin the process of cycling your passwords. If you have any private notes or credit card information or other things inside your vault, out of abundance of caution, probably good to rotate those notes. And in a cloud service, never store anything unencrypted. Always double encrypt. Let the cloud service encrypt and then store the file encrypted. So even if it gets compromised, you have an extra layer of security. And maybe I'll do some videos on that. Sorry to be the bearer of bad news. All this one's been floating around for quite some time, and I'd recommend that you guys read the Ars Technica article on Lastpass Hack. And it would be nice to get at least a fucking apology from the company. It's pretty dirty what's happened, and it's just extraordinary to me that they'd screw up this bad. But that's what happens. Information security is really hard. It's a shame that PGP is not more proliferated as a standard, because ultimately what would have made this a much easier thing to resolve would have been as if the vaults were encrypted with a client-side PGP key, in which case I wouldn't care at all that the vaults got leaked. I'd publicly post them. In fact, when we, for a Lace wallet, start supporting PGP encryption of paper wallets, I'm going to take some ADA, probably $1 million worth of it, put it into a paper wallet, encrypt it with PGP, and publicly post it on my Twitter so you guys can try to break it. Yeah, I'm very confident in those standards. Master passwords, even if they're quite long, it's just a dead standard and it shouldn't be done anymore. So anyway, there are more than Bitwarden. There's KeePass and 1Password, and there's tons of these guys floating around. But we do need to be vigilant. So if you are on LastPass, begin the process of migration. If you have any personally identifiable information there, expect it to be lost. And if you have credit cards, these types of things, rotate them, change the numbers. And as for all of your usernames and passwords, you need to, at the very least, change your passwords. Unfortunately, the adversaries, if they break your vaults, will be fully aware of the accounts you have. So goodbye, LastPass. Thanks, everybody. Have a great Christmas.